Father in heaven, we give you thanks for the time that we've had together, the learning from your word, from your servant Edmund, the videos we've had, the conversations we've had, the networking. We give you thanks for what you are doing around the world. We praise your name, Lord. And we also now, as we listen to Reverend Ong tell us about what you are doing in Europe, we pray, Lord, that our eyes will be open, our hearts moved, and we would be coming to you in prayer for that great continent. In Jesus' name we pray this. Amen.
Right, very briefly, I grew up in Malaysia, and then I worked in Europe for over 20 years, and I'm based in London. And London is a great city of 8 million people who speaks 300 languages. And so if you are in London, you don't have to go to Somalia. Somalia is in London. And so it is very challenging, and I want to say one or two introductory things. You have been fed with lots of food, lots of information. And so my role in the 20 minutes is to not only inform, but inspire and also involve you with something that is very real and happening in our world. I want to acknowledge those who have done the research, and I've been asked to step in because the person could not come. So a lot of the groundwork is done by the researcher. I want to present the big picture of Islam and then zoom in and focus on Europe. Now, when we talk about Islam, I believe there is a lot of fears and emotions. In our time, we hear all the negative news about Islam, and it creates a lot of fears and emotions in a lot of people. How many of you say this would be true for you when you think Islam? Okay. Now, I believe Islam is the last frontier in mission. And it is going to be, and it is the most challenging. And the only, my only credit in presenting this paper is I'm involved with the Islamic world in North Africa, and I'm seeing something that is phenomenal, and I want to encourage you. Because in one place in North Africa, they are turning to Christ by the thousands. The last time I was there this year, I said to a packed church full of first generation Muslims who have become Christian, Muslim background believers. Every hands went up, first generation. So God is doing something great. And I want to inspire you a little bit as well as encourage you. Right, let's start. Right. You have enough food. It will come. So three key areas, and like all other speakers, a lot of research all have to be condensed into three big areas. Short history of Muslim migration in Europe, 12 key issues, and 7 missional response. Obviously, I will not do justice to the subject because it is too broad. History of migration. Sorry. Now, before we go to migration in Europe, this is the big picture of Islam in the world. The top 5 nations: Indonesia, Pakistan, India, Bangladesh, Egypt. And you notice in this chart, the comment here, most Muslims live in Southern and Southeastern Asia, not in the Middle East and North Africa where Islam originated. So this is the world of Islam. Well, Islam, the short history, the early years, mainly by conquest, and the whole of the early church in North Africa was wiped out, almost. And it was very exciting for me to visit this country, and they traced the roots to St. Augustine. I visited Hippo, where St. Augustine started his ministry. There is a, so it started with conquest and then migrant workers, and I will unpack this. And today in Europe there are 44 million. And they are 6% of Europe, and they form the 9th largest Muslim nation. And this projection will, as you see, will go up to 51, and most of them are younger than the average people in Europe. There is great diversity, even among the Muslims themselves, in terms of ethnicity, religions, and history. Islam is imploding within itself. It is not as united as you think, and you hear it in the news all the time. And there is also fresh alignment of different groups. And so there is a desire to go back to pure Islam. And this process is still going on. Sorry. Okay. So through the years, there has been massive migration from the North Africa, a large group of them, 2 million over immigrants in from Morocco, Algeria, Tunisia. They mainly go to France. We are reminded this morning, they come from the Franco-speaking countries. They're all French-speaking. They go to France, and then from Turkey, you have migrant workers, mostly now in Germany. One thing you notice is they all want to go to the developed countries. They do not want to just go to any part of Europe. There is a plan. Because in the richer countries, they are protected, their welfare is taken care of, and they have more freedom as well. So in Europe, this is the spread. Germany has the largest number of Muslims, followed by France, United Kingdom, Italy, and then Bulgaria. Now, this lady is a famous journalist, and she said Europe becomes more and more a province of Islam, a colony of Islam. And Italy is an outpost of that province, a stronghold of that colony. In each one of our city lies a second city, a Muslim city, a city run by Quran, a stage in the Islamic expansion. There's no doubt they're becoming more aggressive, they are becoming evangelistic about their approaches. And so, it is an organized Muslim invasion. This is the graphic picture we see in the media, and each war results in greater diaspora of the Muslim people as well. What are the key issues? Secularization. A lot of them thought Europe would be a Christian nation, and they are shocked. They see the lifestyle there, they see gender issues, and so a lot of them becomes very protective. They don't want the next generation to be contaminated. And so they withdraw into into their own ghetto, so to say. Yeah? And so they form their own schools. They have their everything they try to have their own. Yeah? And in Europe, they have the freedom to do so. In fact, they have more freedom in Europe than in their own countries. Now, whatever I say is also true of many Western countries. That's why they are drawn there. Integration is always an issue in all these countries. And in Europe, in the name of human rights and equality, they are left on their own. In the name of equality, in the name of inclusion. So they form their own schools, they have their own laws, and there is such a diversity in Europe. I can only say to you, this data I share with you is based on a local area called the United Kingdom. So they have over 20 Sharia courts in UK itself. So for family laws, they would prefer to go to their own courts. Some of them would want to have a second wife so they can bring in more of their relatives in. So they divorce one, they bring one, and it creates lots of issues, okay? Marriage, immigration, and so Europe, especially England, the immigration department cannot cope. They don't know what to do. And so I can tell you more stories, but there is no time. And then there is a challenge freedom. They want to have their own worship. They want to have their own mosque. They want to have their own dressing, food, schools. And they are, now one of the biggest challenges is Islamic State has now lots of people from Europe itself. These are Muslims who are born in Europe. And they are so radicalized that they are now involved with Islamic State. And it's causing lots of concern. And the breeding place is other schools. They are teaching extremist teaching in the schools. Again, I say Islam itself is not as united as you think. There are also strong Islamic groups. The Ahmadiyya is one of the largest community and first in UK. And before I came, one local church that I attend have a dialogue with them. So there is great diversity in among the Muslims. And so there are many different councils among them. Discrimination, yes, even though there is equality, there is also discrimination. Okay, 1 in 3 feel they have been discriminated, and the Muslims in Europe come from a whole variety of countries as well. And discrimination in terms of work, housing, education, public space. Social disadvantages, unemployment. What shocks me in this research is 20% of the group between 16 to 74 never work. That means they live on the social system. They have lots of time in their hands. And you know what they get up to. Housing, a lot of them live on social housing. If you're a refugee there, very often once you're recognized, you have a lot of benefits. Health issues, yes. Muslim in politics, yes, they are getting involved in politics in some of the countries. In the there are different ways, the next TNG stand for the next generation. In UK now there are over 200 councillors, 13 MPs, and for the first time we have a Muslim mayor of London. Yeah, this is very significant, the first in any of the Western world. Muslim identity, okay. Of course, they are concerned about the whole Ummah, the pan-Islamic community. They talk about Darul Islam, Darul Harb. Darul Islam is where the Muslim are majority. Darul Harb is where they are minority. And in UK, 80% of the Muslim consider themselves Muslim first. They are Muslim first in terms of their own identity. Contextualization. Okay, sorry. Of course, in the post-Christian era in Europe, there are issues of pluralism. How do they exist? I was part of a diaspora group, and we met in one particular area in London, and in that area, in the schools, there are 200 languages spoken. That is the diversity. And that's the significance of all our global cities. Great diversity. Gender issues. Now there are so many different kind of genders. I get confused, and we have to treat them equally, and so it caused a lot of confusion and pain. And they said, "This is a Christian country. Did you know?" So these are some of the big issues. Yeah. Wahhabi influence, these are some of the radical Islamic practices, and they have their own teachers and their own teaching. Radicalization, yeah, is happening in the different contexts, different places that I have mentioned. And then so it results in a backlash. There is a fear of Islam. They are concerned, and so you have the British National Front who feel that London is becoming Londistan. And they're concerned about UK Independent Party. They're concerned that the Muslim population is getting too big. And so they're concerned that immigration has to be controlled. And this is one of the big issues for Europe. So how are we going to respond in the light of all this? Does it affect you or not, wherever you are placed? Now, one of the key things is once they get to Europe, they have access to every European country, almost. Which means once they have a EU passport, they have access to the world. And that's how mobile they will be. Okay? Does that pose a challenge to you wherever you are? Yeah. There's no escape. And just why Europe, I don't know why, I wasn't told why they have chosen to focus Islam in Europe. I think it's significant. Yeah? Now, I want to say, if you come from any Islamic country, not all Muslims are the same, okay? Just like I work in the Chinese church. I've been the senior pastor of Chinese church. And in our churches, among our staff, we speak 17 languages. Can you imagine that? I have 15 pastoral workers, and we speak 17 languages. That's the diversity. And there is diversity among the Muslims as well. Diversity of belief, diversity of perspective, diversity of needs. We need to pray for transformation. I go to Algeria every year to help the train because the church there is exploding, and they're all Muslim background believers. And one of the things that happen is signs and wonders, dreams and vision. And some of them discover Christ through reading the Quran. Yeah, amazing stories. And I have a book of all their stories. We need to pray for transformation, even through reading the Quran. And many of them also are coming to Christ through satellite TV. I was shocked this last trip. When I landed, they say you have to start your teaching straight away. And the first person I met told me he just became a Christian and he saw me on satellite TV. I said, it can't be. He said, the last time you came, we recorded you. We didn't tell you. We have to help those who are suffering and displaced. Yes, you see this in your media, how they are treated. Yes, the countdown. Okay, so crisis also provides opportunities. Okay, and churches need to respond to this. Can we not be involved in this kind of situation? Love our Muslim neighbors. There are a lot of fears about Muslim, and so we can play our part, especially as churches. Just opposite one of our site is an Iraqi church, and they speak Arabic. They understand them. And one of the other Muslim country that are exploding in London are the Iranians. They're turning to Christ also in large numbers. Gospel of forgiveness. There is a cycle of violence in Islam, and I think the Christian message of a break from this. We have to model also engagement and dialogue, and I'm so pleased the local church now I attend really take time to get to know their Muslim neighbors. And these are the Ahmadiyya, and the Ahmadiyya is considered a sect, and they are persecuted by the Muslims themselves. Reformation in Islam, yes, that we need to pray for reformation. And one of the reasons why they are responding is there are lots of prayer for the Muslim people globally. And we need to continue to pray that the Lord of the harvest will bring this to completion. Okay, I will end with this. Someone who have done a lot of research is this man called David Garrison. He said there are 9 rooms in the House of Islam. And these are the 9 rooms all over the world. And he said there is a people movement among the Muslims, okay? We are in the middle of the greatest movement of Muslim turning to Christ. And he defined Muslim as at least 1,000 believers in the last 10 to 20 years. Or there are 100 plants. And it's happening in large numbers now compared with the rest of the early years. Okay. These are what I feel are what Chinese churches can do together, beyond reaching just the Chinese people. Yeah, and I'm thankful I've seen more and more Chinese who speak Arabic in different countries. We must break through that barrier. The neutral phase of Christianity. In many parts of the world, Christianity is still strongly linked with the West. And we need to show that it is more global. And Chinese, we are neutral. We need to work with others. And then the global diaspora in global cities are a new phenomenon that is happening in a massive way in all the global cities of the world. That means you don't have to go to them, they are coming to your cities. Yeah? And then the last one, TNG, the next generation. The next generation, I believe, are scattered in all the global cities, and they are part of the third culture that don't have the traditional boundaries. And I think they are like what Dr. Fileman is trying to do. They are blind to their own background. They don't, you know, they are a very different generation. So we thank God that all these are opportunities to bring the gospel to the whole world, especially to the Islamic world. Thank you.
Anyway, we're looking at culture now. And without any further ado, I'm going to get our illustrious Sam George, Mr. George, to come and talk to us about this very, very interesting subject, culture and media.
Thank you, Yang. All right, the last of the report, I believe. But whoever came out with the ARMD idea for COVID, they need recognition. And I think it's been a great, just to hear stories and models of different ministries from all over the world. It has been a very enriching experience. Hopefully, you can say amen to that. Yeah, sure. So, yeah, it is a great idea. I know even in conferences now, I know we don't do as much preaching. And it's like the business schools. In business schools, we have given up giving lectures. It's all case studies, right? And those who do go to business school, it's all case study-based teaching. And working with families and communities in Asian context in the U.S., I found one thing. I lead an organization that does bring families together. And a lot of those Indian and South Asian families, we talk about any family problem, they say, oh, we don't have any family problem. The shame-based culture. Then what I do is, instead of teaching them, I bring case studies of scenarios of family situation. So what I found is, South Asian families are very good in fixing other people's problem. So in the process, what they do is, they are indirectly learning how to solve problems that families come through. So that's the whole case study approach. But there's also a temptation of teaching case studies. Most of us are practitioners. I see church leaders, ministry organizations, you're on the forefront of social organization. Whenever you come to a conference, you hear a model. Okay, I'm in Singapore, I heard Hong Kong, this is happening. Next week, I'm trying to implement exactly, duplicate the same thing. It won't work. And they'll often fail. And you'll be more frustrated. And so there are people who go to conference after conference trying to copy the ideas. It may not work. So you may have to think through and your own context, how do we apply and cross-pollinate ideas? And so coming to, we have two stories, two case studies in the area of media, and I'm going to briefly touch upon it. If you haven't, please go back and read. And if you are like me, I haven't gotten to read all the case studies, all the reports that has been made available online. Maybe in light of the discussion, go back and read again and look at your own context. What are some lessons that I can translate easily? And so we will do that today. So I've taken a little different approach. I'm going to briefly tell the story. I also want to frame a set of lenses through which you can look at the scenario and glean some lessons. I will leave some questions for you to discuss in your time together. So here we go. These are the two reports that is made available to us. New Life Cell Church and Breakthrough. One from Taiwan, one from Hong Kong. If any of the report writers are here? Okay. I know Dr. Choi is here. They were involved with Breakthrough. Others, it would be a good idea for all of us to know who the report writers were there, or the founders of the mission. So that's one feedback. I want to give it back to James and others so that we can connect with these ministries and these organizations. Breakthrough, briefly. It's a Hong Kong-based youth and media ministry, started in '73. They began with this magazine called Breakthrough in '74. And there's almost, remember, it's almost 40-some years now. They call themselves as a pre-evangelistic ministry, extends the mission of the church. So they're closely linked to the idea of what is it, who they are church and what they want to do as a church. Then they, in Breakazine in 2009, they created an online and a magazine. They called them Breakazine, and they began to do camps for the readers and the attendees. So they're kind of moving from the print media culture into both the online and also having real life camps with their readers. The Lil Post, and then they also began to do youth festivals. So youth culture, what is the popular culture? How I can leverage the popular culture, gather and convene young people who are kind of bought into that culture that defines them, and how we can engage them with the gospel. So that's been largely the model and what they've done 40 some years. The challenges before them is threefold. What I would call technological, which is as the world moves to a web-based social media, how will they translate a print media culture into an online social media culture? That'll be one challenge before this ministry. Second will be generational. It's almost 40 years old. How will the leadership change as we pass on the baton to the new generation of leaders who think media and culture very differently from the previous generation? Third, youth culture is also shifting significantly to video and oral cultures. And orality is becoming a significant force. And also social media is becoming a significant part of the youth culture. So how are we going to translate as an organization for breakthrough? Number two is, okay, I need to move there too. These are not synced. Okay, New Cell Church. This is more of a recent media ministry of a local church. They began the church in 2009. Then they developed a whole, what they call as a media mission center. Young people, they began with online in the first place, and they began to reach out to the non-believers. For example, they say their Facebook account has something like 75,000 people. And no, 86,000 people, and 90% of them are non-Christians. So amazing way to leverage online community. They also say they have a huge following. They have an online newsletters. Every small group has their own electronic newsletters going around within them. They also have created innovative outreaches to non-believers that they are connecting online. Then they began something 2004, very creative, Cross Cafe, where they want to translate this virtual relationship into real relationship. And how can we do that? And they have some really innovative approaches that they've taken in convening this Cross Cafes, which was an existing cafe. They want to convert that into a church's ministry. They also came out with the I Pray app. I thought it was very innovative, kind of a prayer network through an app. If you can download an app and share your prayer concern, pray for each other, bind each other together with the spiritual dimension of prayer. And they're recording their services, they're online, they have a very active Facebook, they are media pastors and ministers. They are constantly online, making themselves available to people who are online in their large online community. There's some lessons that they have learned. One is content matters. In the online world, if you don't constantly update and be relevant, I think you'll be obsolete very quickly. Shelf life is very short. Our web world is full of lies, scandals, and sensational content and cyberbullying. This new reality of online culture where you're anonymous, you don't know anything, they are constantly lying and cheating, and sensationalism of the online media. How can you compete with that? And third is evangelistic potential is huge. And I think it's a great lesson for all of us. If we are in traditional media or no media, what does it mean to engage and leverage the evangelistic potential that is there on the online media and the media culture? Media platform is constantly changing. To provide leadership in the media world is extremely challenging. And what does it mean in the constantly evolving media culture? How do we stay current and relevant? Moving from online to real life is a real difficulty. You might have large number of friends on Facebook, does not mean membership on in the church or Sunday morning show up at the church. Or doesn't mean church has to become online. There are some churches now in the West, they do only online service. And so you can listen to a song, listen to a sermon, give you a tithe online. You can do pretty much everything online. And so is that really church? What is your ecclesiology? How do we understand church to be a body of Christ? All of that would be a challenge before as we embrace online media culture. A resistance from within the church. How do older members adapt to the new media and media-based ministry, and challenges in mobilizing and training online evangelists? Maybe some of our training approach or equipping approach may be found wanting to train a next generation of online media leaders. So this is the two cases. I want to kind of set the framework, throw some ideas, both theological and missiological ideas, which will probably help you to analyze these cases in your own context around your table. And these are the things that I want to share. Two quotes I want to begin with. One is when Marshall McLuhan said that medium is the message. What did it mean? Of course, he did not have television, internet, and all back then. It's almost 1964 or something he said this. And then more recently, Nicholas Carr is a neuroscientist. He wrote a book called Shallows, What the Internet is Doing to Our Brains. And a very fascinating book, and this is what he said. The media supply the stuff of thought, but they are also shaping the process of thought. What the net seems to be doing is chipping away my capacity for concentration and contemplation. Whether I am online or not, my mind now expects to take in information the way the net distributes it, swiftly moving as streams of particle. We are becoming a very shallow culture. We don't process deeply. And that's becoming symptomatic of our generation and our times. So four kind of frames through which I want you to look at this issue. Number one, cultural mandate. Second, leveraging evangelistic potential. What is faith community? People of faith. And what does it mean? And also then finally, evils of modern technology and culture. And we are a people of book. We have a message of the gospel. We have the person of Jesus Christ. How do we translate that in the context of media and technology culture? That's the foundational question that I want to ask. But I want to look at these four lenses to guide our discussion. Number one, cultural mandate. Genesis 1:28. We know, the great book on this. My friend Andy Couch wrote this book called Creative Culture Making. What does it mean? What is our cultural making mandate? And how do we understand that? So there is also a particularity of a culture and its universalizing tendency. You CNN, you produce it here and market all over the world. And we have this tendency to produce some content, my pastor's message, my app, and then transport it all over the world. So how do I tension between particularity and universality? And how do I navigate through that? What is mission as incarnation? Jesus wasn't born in every culture and went everywhere and whatever it is. He was born, confined to one culture. How do we understand our incarnational understanding? Confine yourself to the limits and the bounds of his time. He could only walk that much. There was no bullet trains. There was no flying around, and he was not trying to evangelize the whole world. But what did he do, and how did he do it differently? And so in media, in the context of this new media technology culture, how does incarnation look like? What is online friendship, and how can influence online friendship for the gospel? And also translation. At the very heart of Christian gospel is also that mission as translation. We are constantly in the business of translation. Moment we fail to translate, I think Christianity will become irrelevant. And so as the new culture evolves, what is our translation message? In your context, whether it's Chinese or Hong Kong or Singapore or India or Chicago or New York, what does it mean to translate into the online culture of my context? Then, also culture making, how do I keep it from following the latest fads? Okay, get onto the next bandwagon, next social media app, next application, and then, getting on that. I mean, it'll be like getting onto a treadmill that runs faster and faster and faster. And so what does it mean to be, as a local church, as a ministry, how do I understand my cultural mandate? Second question, how do I leverage the reach and influence of the media? We know how important the print media was for Christianity. Reformation, we printed the Bible and how it leveraged Christianity and how Bible was translated, how far it has reached. And so now we have a new platforms of social media or Facebook and YouTube, and how do I leverage some of these platforms? Christians were very good on the print media. We were early on the Christian radio and television, but now on the web media, how much can we translate and be relevant on this world? It's also non-threatening. Sometimes to walk into a church is a very, very scary thing for a non-Christian. So online maybe the first pre-evangelism world will be on the virtual world. So how can I leverage my pre-evangelism efforts online? All of our presence online can have an influence on others who are online. Getting on every platform, media platform, how do I select which media platform to be on? I'm choosing not to be on some platform, choosing to be some. As a result, you will lose some people, you will focus on some people. So how do I gain my focus? Whom to reach? How do I leverage my potential? How to message gospel correctly? There's a tension. A lot of young people are getting on the latest media, but sometimes they don't know the kind of the gospel gets contaminated and loses its power, and it doesn't have the kind of desired results. Just because you get onto the media does not mean translates into life transformation. Limitations of modern media. We need to see that, okay, there is limitations to the media. It cannot do everything. And with the shallowing of the minds, virtuality of relationship, lots of friends online, but there's no one real friend. When I'm in a deep trouble, middle of the night, I don't have anybody to call to. The 21st century is going to be a century of loneliness. I have lots of online friends, but I'm struggling with loneliness. And so how do I bridge and become flesh and blood friends to somebody? How do I help my church to become into that? Third lens that I want to look here is faith community. How do I use media but not abuse media and technology? How is the tension between real and virtual? I think you talked about it. Generational discontinuity. This is going to be big because whatever the media or technology platform is going, somebody is going to be an early adopter. Somebody will probably never want to get onto the platform. So media will divide the church among the early adopters and the middle and the late adopters. And it'll create confusion within the church. So if you're a pastor and if you are leaning towards to be online all the time, there are some people who really need a counseling at this point of time. Or who wants to really share some life crisis. So how do I navigate as a community faith leader between early adopters and late adopters? Then the reality that the ethics of creative destruction. A new platform also creates and destroys something that just was created last year. So how do I deal with the ethic of creative destruction as a pastor, as a media minister? Evils of media and technology. The selfie culture, the culture of narcissism that is promoting. And it just breeds that whole idea of self-centeredness. Online addiction. We are spending more time, young people are spending 10, 12 hours. I heard young people are, it's like a babysitter, 12 hours online. They are frying their brains. When they are, 8, 9, 10 years old, the circuits are getting really burned inside. By the time they become 12, 13, a moral decision-making becomes a crisis. Don't make a will, choices, they'll make very poor choices. So younger generations are breeding on a diet that is really burning their circuits. How are we going to deal with that? Deception and duplicity that exists rampantly online culture. How do we going to help with that? Immorality. Porn is all over. Pastors, church leaders are addicted to pornography. This is a new challenge of the church is facing. How can we navigate through this? People who are married are flirting with other people in the church on online platforms or the media platforms of the church. How are you going to deal with this? Stewardship of life resources, my time, my energy, my passion, and all of that, and successes and resources. How can I steward the resources of a church meaningfully? Can any end, in order to reach, in order to efficiency, the maximum impact and reach, justify any means and use of any culture and technology? So these are the 4 lenses that I want to look through the issue of media culture. These 2 stories, your own context of stories, and I want to leave you with these 4 questions. What are some insights on contemporary media culture in your country? What are some trends? What are some major media cultural influences? Here is the latest, music video star or a YouTube star that they've created. Okay, what are some influences that they have? Who are the popular cultural influences? What are some opportunities and challenges does media culture offer in your country, in your context of ministry? Why culture matters to the gospel? Very fundamental, missiological question. Why is it important? What is the Missio Dei in the context of a media and technology culture? This is something that we cannot avoid. All of us have to deal with this 21st century reality of new medias and new technology. It'll shape us, it'll shape our churches and our ministries and our future. And so how do we engage? How do we understand the mission of God in this context of media and technology culture? It's time for you to talk. Okay, so turn to your table members and begin. I'll leave this on the screen. Let's talk about it and how media culture shapes our churches and ministries.